What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Yes, it's us again. Welcome. We're here with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice, this time for the two-game Saturday Classic NFL DFS slate. Week 16, we have two matchups, Bengals and Steelers, Bills and Chargers, here to break down everything for you for the FanDuel and DraftKings slates. Welcome. I am Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, and I am joined by Jack, the owner of DFS Magic, creator of the lineup builder at Occupy Fantasy. Jack, it's that time of year, man. What's up?
Brian, happy holidays to you. Back for more, and I feel like we've gotten an extra amount of these videos this last month, huh? It seems like the NFL is catering to our short slate fun here, so ready to get into it with you.
I know, and I feel like I did not do you proud because I airballed the afternoon only contest at the live final, and
Ah,
but it was a tough slate. We had three popular offenses, and it did make it really difficult to use our typical game stacking idea.
dude, I played that slate a little bit, and it was that was the hardest short slate I've ever had to build. In fact, it was the exact opposite of this one. I think in that slate, you literally could not game stack because everyone was like 8K,
Yep,
right?
yep, that is
In this slate, are there any plays that are 8K?
yeah, and we'll
Like,
talk about that here in a second. So yeah, I'm glad the hardest slate of all time was for 500K for free. But alas, in this video, we will talk about our classic short slate strategies that we discuss every short slate video, just to remind you, and we'll apply those strategies to this slate. We'll go team by team, position by position, injuries, everything you need. However, Jack, we have to appease some people because it's seemingly every time that you and I do these short slate videos, we get one or two comments that say, I can't find the picks. Where are the picks in this video? God forbid we talk about anything but the picks. So, for those people who just want picks, we're going to rapid fire favorite plays at each position, no explanations, and then you can turn the video off. So, Jack, favorite quarterback play on this slate?
Josh Allen.
Easy.
You?
I think I will go with the cheap options at each position. I will say Mason Rudolph. So, running back.
Um, I'm going stud every time, or do you want to alternate?
It's up to you. Whatever your favorite play is, and I will be
Let's
flexible.
alternate. You take the stud, I'll take the value this time.
Okay, James Cook.
I'm gonna go Chase Brown.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Wide receiver.
I mean, Diggs.
I'll go underperforming wide receiver George Pickens, and if we're going cheaper, I will say Khalil Shakir. And then tight end, I like Gerald Everett.
I'm gonna go to the Tanner Hudson well. He was popular a slate ago and failed, and now he's not popular, and why not?
Easy. All right, guys, you want the picks? There they are. Now, if you want to listen to strategies from people who have won literal millions of dollars playing DFS, stay tuned for the next 30 minutes. So, Jack, let's talk about the injuries because there are quite a few that impact the slate. And as you mentioned, salary is pretty non existent, and that will probably be the first short slate tenant that we discuss on this slate. But if we start from the first game, Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, we have, I'm just pulling it up on my side here. Cincinnati is without their starting defensive tackle, DJ Reader. He is on injured reserve. That helps the Pittsburgh running backs and running game a little bit. More importantly, Jamar Chase is out with that shoulder injury. And then on Pittsburgh's side, DeMonte KZ is suspended for that hit on Michael Pittman. His backup, Trenton Thompson, is out. And then their stud safety, Minka Fitzpatrick, is also out. So that's two starters plus one of the starters' backups out in the secondary. That is a massive boost to the Cincinnati passing game. And Kenny Pickett will not return in time for this game. They had enough of your boy Mitch Trubisky. Mason Rudolph will start. So, Jack, thoughts on how these injuries will impact how you're playing the slate?
Yeah, got to pour a little bit out for my buddy Mitch. This may be the last time we ever see him in the NFL. So it was a good run, buddy. Yeah, no, I think as we'll get into with salary, the obvious question that's slate is who can compete with the Josh Allen offense, and we've seen Jake Browning put up numbers, and to your point, these injuries should make it quite a bit more likely, at least that ceiling gets raised up, right? So that's probably something to look at. That's the biggest thing I see. Any other takes from you on the injuries?
Not really. And just to clarify what happens with Chase out of the lineup, T. Higgins will be the alpha wide receiver one. Tyler Boyd, we see his target share increase when Jamar Chase is out of the lineup. And then Trenton Irwin will take over. If you look at when Chase missed 4 games last year, Irwin was just getting into the mix at the beginning of that stretch. His final 2 games, he played 70% plus of the snaps. That has happened when T. Higgins has been out of the lineup. He's basically their replacement. He will be the wide receiver 3 for this game, and he is the minimum price of $3,000 on DraftKings. So, speaking of quarterbacks, really quickly, with Rudolph starting, he is just $4,800, which it may be the biggest difference in quarterback salary we've seen in some time, Jack. If we look on FanDuel, Josh Allen is 9,500. Mason Rudolph is 6,600, so nearly $3,000 over there as well. Can you remember such a wide range of quarterback salaries?
No, and I think in particular, I feel like on DraftKings, usually those cheap guys are pretty cheap compared to the studs. FanDuel, this is I think very unusual. Like a $9,500 quarterback on a 2 game slate. I feel like normally you'd only get like 1,500 savings on some bad guy, and that's why you see on FanDuel the top heavy quarterback exposure more than DraftKings. So yeah, I think this is pretty unprecedented.
For sure. So if we look at the second game, Buffalo and LA, Buffalo double-digit favorites here. On Buffalo side, just when their defense was starting to acclimate to losing all the guys they lost earlier in the year, they're now losing defensive tackle Jordan Phillips to injured reserve. Safety Micah Hyde remains out, so 2 starters down for them. On LA side, center Will Clapp is out, so a little bit of a downgrade to their offensive line. Keenan Allen remains out. Didn't practice all week. He will be out once again. And then they have some secondary issues as well. Dean Leonard, their outside corner, will miss his second straight game. And then there's a possibility that their slot corner, Isang Bassi, literally have never heard his name nor said his name out loud before. So if I said it wrong, I am sorry. But it's a possibility he misses with a concussion. So that could be 2 cornerbacks against Josh Allen out, which obviously would be pretty bad for that defense.
Yeah, not a lot, I guess. I guess in that game, but the obvious one is the quarterback situation with San Diego or San Diego, Los Angeles. And again, how do you? This has come up a lot on these short slates, right? I think an unusual amount is how do you handle these backup quarterbacks, right? So I think that's something we'll get into with each team here.
For sure. And it's interesting because we've had a lot of bad backup quarterbacks, but we've had a decent amount of backup quarterbacks. I mean, we literally have 3 of the 4 quarterbacks on this slate are backup quarterbacks. Browning has obviously surprised everyone. Stick, while they lost by, I think, literally 50 points against the Raiders, he still put up 20 fantasy points. So competent
Yeah.
in some sense as far as what we care about in DFS. So before we go game by game, position by position, let's talk about the salary issue. Now, if you remember from our previous videos, if you've read our daily plugs before, if you played short slates, you know that the 3 ways we like to get different on these 2 gamers, 3 gamers, 4 gamers is super stacking various games. That obviously applies to this slate. I think it's very in play for both games. We talk about playing low owned players. There are a decent chunk in this 2 game setting where we can find pivots at a couple positions. So that's in play as well. But Jack, I was building today. I've actually finished my lineups for this slate, and salary may not matter at all, right? Outside of if you don't play Josh Allen, you probably don't want to leave enough to where you could upgrade to him. But hey, we had a Tommy DeVito slate recently where that disproved that theory very quickly. But it would not shock me if any player at any position was the highest scoring player on the slate, which really means you don't have to consider salary that much. And if you're constrained by the rules of hand building, it may be hard to break out of that shell and realize that you can leave a lot more on the table.
Yeah, and I have to give you credit for the now officially dubbed the DeVito rule we now have on these, where it's like, hey man, do you think this quarterback can outscore this quarterback? And your auto reply is, hey man, DeVito rule. Like Tommy DeVito outscored, all these other guys, so anyone can do it. Yeah, I think it is tough when you're hand building, right? You don't want to just leave like 4K. But I think, like you said, just emphasizing the lineup structure, the correlation, and then limiting the trash plays. I think those are kind of the keys that I see in terms of those kind of lineups. And yeah, I think especially like you said, small field, like you don't want to be leaving so much that someone could upgrade to Allen, right? Because someone might actually play that lineup. Um, what about the uniqueness factor here? Do you think? I mean, I would contend probably when there's fewer ways to use all the salary, do you think the field is probably going to be more condensed into those smaller groups of lineups?
I would think so. I mean, you and I have seen it countless times, right? Whether it's Showdown or Short Slate. If there's only a certain amount of combos, a more finite amount than typical on how to use most of the salary, people will do that, right? And it's not like it's hard to use all the salary. You can easily do it on this slate. But again, if we just go position by position, right? Eckler is the highest price. James Cook is the highest price. Then Mixon. Yes, Eckler has been terrible. Cook has really heated up lately. Mixon's been hit or miss. But like, would it shock you? And you can just answer this out loud. If Warren, Najee Harris, or even if Chase Brown broke a couple long ones, outscored Eckler, the answer is no, right?
Yeah, these running backs have very low floors. I mean, Cook is with a rushing quarterback who at any time could just steal the touchdowns, right? Um, by the way, credit to the Occupy model is literally the only one I've seen that actually puts Chase Brown like even with or above Mixon. We checked the other sites. Members may or may not know that they're still stuck on Mixon as most of the projections for them. So he's got a low floor, and then Eckler just hasn't been that good. So yeah, I think that's one way to look at it. And then, I think even at the wide receiver position, right? Like, you just kind of got a bunch of guys in there that could go off. Maybe Diggs is the only one with a really high floor, but other than that, it's kind of low floor, high ceiling guys for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we just think about the name Stephon Diggs. That's what we come up with. But if you look at his game logs, he scored less than 9 points in 4 of his last 5. So even he is not immune to being outscored by much lower price players on this slate. And while I think it was a product of the game environment last week and the weather, Josh Allen literally threw it 15 times and they just hammered the run game. Who's to say they don't do that again here against the Chargers? They found success. Let's not throw it 40 times if we don't have to. If that's the case, that lowers Diggs' ceiling and floor. It lowers Gabe Davis, Shakir, Kincaid, all those guys. And then the slate really becomes chaotic if they throw as little as they did last week.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it time and again where teams turn it over and the coach is like, "Okay, we got to establish the run," and then we all cry, right? But in this case, it might actually help us because people are going to play that passing game as if it's gonna, they're going to throw it 50 times.
What do you have the projected ownership on Allen for both sites right now?
So we have 56 on FanDuel. I need to pull up
I think DraftKings
DraftKings,
was,
but it's
was
got to be
similar.
over
Yeah.
over 50. I mean, that I think maybe we've seen him 50% on another two gamer, Allen specifically.
Yep.
So yeah, it's honestly it wouldn't surprise me if it's like 60, 65. Like, these junk guys is kind of hard to tell if they'll go 3 or 8 or 10. I think we have 8 to 10.
Right.
What do you mentioned Browning a few times to me. Like it seems like you're pretty excited about that as like a pretty key pivot off Allen.
Very. I mean, I think it's probably the best play on the slate as far as upside, pricing, ownership, not being trashy, having a condensed target tree, facing a banged up secondary. It all adds up for me. And honestly, even if Allen throws regularly, who's to say Browning doesn't outscore him? Browning's put up 20 plus in each of his 3 starts, right? Obviously came in against Pittsburgh, or I think he started against Pittsburgh, right? Came in against Baltimore. So his start against Pittsburgh wasn't great, but obviously that was with all the secondary guys there and his first start in the NFL. So he could literally outscore Allen just in a regular environment, not in a Allen and the Bills run heavy environment. So uh, it's just it makes too much sense to me to not prioritize Browning in high risk contests.
Yeah, yeah, love it. Okay, so to circle back to your discussion of salary, I think the bottom line for folks is, you can definitely leave a lot. Just limit the trash plays and, think about like if Allen could be used in place of your quarterback. And I think, I'd recommend if you're playing a large field contest, I probably just wouldn't use all the cap just because we know on this slate that leaving a lot of salary, we can build optimal lineups. So there's no reason to risk the duplicates, right? You can't cover every combo between 5K and zero on the slate with your lineups, but you might as well cover ones that you know are going to be unique because we know the field is always going to use salary just till the end of time. It doesn't matter; they're always going to do it.
And when you say limit your trash plays, just for those who aren't familiar, can you expand on what that means?
Yeah, so I'm curious how you do it. I kind of start by sorting by ownership, and then I'll look at like snap counts and projections. I'm just trying to not play usually more than one. Sometimes I'll go two, but most often one of these kind of guys that say is under 50% snap count or is like sub 10% owned, because you don't need to play more than one of those, because if they go off, your lineup is already got a really good chance to win and you can just play chalk around it. So is that how you look at it?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm thinking guys like Jalen Guyton, Alex Erickson, Allen Robinson, maybe Latavius Murray, Ty Johnson, Chase Brown to an extent. If we look at tight ends, the backup tight ends who I don't think will play on the slate, maybe if you're crazy enough. But those types of guys, right? Wide receiver twos and ones who are or lower owned, I don't count those as trash plays. Yeah, I agree. It's some combo of ownership and how often they get on the field and how often they touch the ball.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So
Uh,
we talked about quarterback. Just really briefly, are you considering playing Easton Stick, Mason Rudolph in your mass multi-entry lineups? Uh,
I
I know
am. I am.
I'm considering in small field as well. How are you going to play those guys?
Man, I was just gonna say DeVito rule. No, I think what we did say on the DeVito slate though was that um the uh crap, Titans quarterback. Why am I blanking on his name?
Will Levis.
Um Levis. He was a good play to me because we knew where the ball was going. I
Right.
think with, like you said, both of these quarterbacks are pretty condensed target trees. So that makes me feel a lot better about investing 10, 20% of my lineups in those guys, because I feel good about who to pair them with. Pickens, Johnson, the running backs catch the ball, and then for the Chargers, they just don't have that many guys. So it's Eckler, Everett, and the top two receivers. So I'm gonna do it. That's why, though. I think if it was a situation where they had like six active pass catchers and I had no idea where it was going, I probably wouldn't, for the same reason I didn't do DeVito.
Yeah, I mean, for reference, that DeVito slate, there were six receivers. We thought Wandale would be the top guy, but there was all kinds. I mean, Isaiah Hodgins caught a touchdown, right? All those other guys were in the mix. They barely had a tight end see the field, so it made it much more difficult to stack. Now, if you're just going to play DeVito without any short slate rules, which ended up winning on FanDuel basically, then yeah, but we're never going to get there if we're stacking games properly because we know of the leverage it provides over the field. Now, speaking of that, are you going to four-man stack Easton Stick, four-man stack Mason Rudolph, or are you going to allow three-man stacks as well?
I'm gonna four-man stack it, and I think the reason is, number one, we have the data. The leverage just says it wins more often than it's used. Like you said, the winning FanDuel I think was like a 3-by-1 or something, and it's not that those can't win. It's that there's so many more for folks that are wondering why we don't recommend those in large field. There's just so many more combos of those lineups, and the field is using that so much more often. You can win, but it's just very difficult to find the exact right combo. Whereas if you force four of the same team in, we have data saying it's correlated and it can win, and the field's just not doing that as much. So I'm going to, and the other big reason too on this slate is both those the running backs catch the ball right on those
Yeah.
teams. So it's very easy to throw in one of those running. You don't have to play like three wide receivers from one of those teams, right? You can go running back, pass catcher, defense, even, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm definitely going to do that. DraftKings, I guess we have to bring it up since there's the ability to go over four. Any team besides Buffalo you would consider going more than four on this slate?
I think Cincinnati as well, with the cheaper Chase Brown at running back, Joe Mixon catches passes, the variety of tight ends, Tanner Hudson, three guys at receiver, defense. I think you can go five. And honestly, if Buffalo goes run heavy and the Chargers suck and that game scores 25, 30 points, I don't think it will, but we play for outlier outcomes in the largest contest. Even like a six-man stack of Cincinnati wouldn't surprise me. If that won, I'm not sure I'll play it, but if it won, I'd be like, yeah, that actually makes sense.
Especially when you can just play like Cooks and Diggs, right? And they
Yeah.
could very easily just take all the points from that offense. And then the other game could just brick, and there you go. So all right, and then the final part of the lineup construction is the bringbacks. So I think, Brian, you probably would expect a lot of the field to play like 3-by-0, 4-by-0 Bills.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on the bring back specifically for that game? And then just, I guess we can hit all the teams.
Yeah, for the Buffalo game, I'm at least allowing one, at minimum one Charger in all Bills lineups in my small field lineups. I might even push that to two in larger contests, but you can play it a little more straight up in the smaller field GPPs. And then the other games, I'm min two, right? Cincinnati, min two, Pittsburgh, min two. If you play a Chargers, Easton Stick Stack, min two Bills. Uh, the games are too good to not allow multiple bringbacks. I think you can even allow up to three, depending on how you're building the rest of your lineup on DraftKings specifically. But The one you have to really think about is the Bills game because if you play 0, especially if you play 1, that's how the field is primarily going to play that game. And do you want to compete with 55, 60% Josh Allen when most of the people are building that way? You have to overstack it or get really different elsewhere.
Yep. And then I don't agree or I don't disagree with anything you said. I'm gonna probably use the same rules. And then the other part we talk about, and this gets a little bit into game stacking, but also just how to get unique in the two gamers. Defense against a quarterback. It seems in play here for every single one. What are your thoughts?
I mean, absolutely, right? Allen is prone to making some mistakes. And then you have 3 other quarterbacks who are literally backups. Yes, pick 6, multiple sacks, multiple turnovers, but still passing for multiple touchdowns. Easily on the table here. Probably the number one way to get different if you don't like these other options.
Yep. And then I guess one final one for folks thinking small field. Do you think you have to do things like play a defense against a quarterback, or like would you play a Bills 4-0 in a small field lineup, or do you think even in those contexts you have to try to look to be that different?
I think it depends on how much you like the low owned players, which we will touch on here in a second. I like a decent amount of them, so I think you can get away with a 4-0 stack, but I'm still a sucker for the templates, the rules, sticking to a strategy, especially we have so many slates here, Jack, over the coming weeks that if you can just stick to these templates, stick in the players, and then modify a little bit based on the slate dynamics, you're going to come out better in the long run than trying to really pare it down and get in the nitty gritty each short slate, especially for 99% of the people watching these videos who don't have time like we do to make lineups, right? Just stick to the template, stick to the proven strategies of stacking, and if you find something that's a little off that, you can go with it, but don't go into it thinking I'm going to find something different.
Yeah, and to your point, the last one we had with Detroit, I had a top 10 lineup that if Judy bonused, I would have gotten second. I don't think I was live for first, but everyone else around me had 4-0 Lions. Like
Yep.
I was the only, and Judy wasn't an unpopular play. He was like 20% owned, but
Yeah.
people just don't use it in those stacks. So, that's just a way you can eat a super chalky offense like Buffalo and give yourself a chance. And hey, like you said, Buffalo just threw the ball 15 times, right? So you got to think if they're not being pushed, like they're probably just happy to hand it off. So that's more evidence to say, play something as a bring back.
All right, let's talk about that then, and we'll go through the last couple of positions here pretty quickly. But the Buffalo running game, obviously, James Cook has just exploded the last couple of games, has helped everyone in best ball tournaments across the nation. But you look at 39 points last week. You look at 25 the week before, being used in the passing game a lot more. There's been a bit of a shift in the number 2 running back. Ty Johnson has taken over kind of this complementary role. We saw 9 carries last week in a target, 7 touches the week before, 6 the week before that. Latavius is basically really long down in distance, maybe some goal line work. So how are you handling these Bills backups? Because I really like Ty Johnson a lot, especially if we expect this game script to pan out.
Yeah, man, this is so I think in general, I'm always wary of the 60+% owned running backs, especially. We just seen them fail a lot. Not even just injuries. They just fail sometimes. He only played half the snaps last week, which I know they were blowing out, but the week before he only played 44. Now he's getting a lot of touches, right? So I think, to your point, I think the backup running backs for Buffalo are very interesting here. Um, you know, could they outscore Cook outright? That's maybe tough, but
Right.
like could you play one and leave it, not have so much salary on the table where you couldn't upgrade? Like that would seem very viable to me. Let me ask you this: would you consider playing two of them in the same lineup, either in or not in a game stack?
100%, dude. You play Cook. And, I mean, I honestly like it better if you don't have Josh Allen in that lineup, but you play James Cook, you play Ty Johnson, you play Bills defense, and that looks really good. It's just the Walmart version of David Montgomery, Jameer Gibbs, Lions defense that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago.
Yep, exactly right. And the difference here is that the field doesn't seem to realize that they're splitting the work as much as they are, so they're just jamming Cook. And frankly, Cook will let them use the salary cap, right?
Yep,
So yeah, I love that one.
exactly. And just really quickly, we talked about Brown a little bit. Do you have any strong stands on any other running backs on this slate, or are you going to play it mostly straight up?
No, I think I mean I've become a huge fan of the backup running backs. And actually on the that Detroit slate, Chase Brown wasn't the optimal DraftKings, at least in the $5 50K to first that I played. So again, we've seen. I would love to do maybe that'll be an off-season project, is look at the how often backup running backs appear in the optimal versus field use. I feel like lately it's just been incredible. So
Honestly, if
Brown,
it happens once a season, it's probably worthwhile. So, and it has multiple
well,
times. So,
that's like the backup quarterback approach, right,
yeah,
for Showdown.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah, no, I think Brown and Johnson are really interesting. Yeah, beyond that, I think I'll just play it straight up. The Pittsburgh guys, we know where it's going. Eckler, we know where it's going. Yeah, I don't think you got to play every backup. You've got two clear leverage running backs there to use. So I think that's where I'm at with running back.
Yeah, I think you can keep a pretty tight player pool at running back no matter how many lineups you're making. Now, receiver, we talked about Diggs, we talked about T. Higgins and the Cincinnati guys. Gabe Davis, just ultra impressive 0-25-0-0 stat line, playing like 80% of the snaps. He's going to go low owned, right? I can't imagine anyone's going to be thrilled to click in a guy who has a 75% chance in the last month of scoring 0 points, right, at his price tag.
Yeah, sorry, did you say Gabe?
Yeah, Gabe.
Yeah, dude, I mean, his ownership just stands out. In fact, again, referencing, we like to survey other site projections. They have Shakir and Gabe Davis basically projected for the same amount of points, which, sure, if you're strictly going off like box scores, right? Okay. But we know Gabe Davis is a multi-touchdown, deep threat. So yeah, he just stands out as a kind of almost like LOL ownership play on this slate. Like, especially if you're playing Josh Allen. I mean, it's insane that Josh Allen's going to go 60% and his deep threat will go, sub 20. So
Yeah.
I would think, Brian, in a small field lineup, when you're trying to get a little different but not too crazy, playing Gabe Davis with Allen would almost be just a no-brainer.
And that's honestly all you have to do. You could play chalk the rest of the way. You play a 4-1, 4-2 bill stack. You include Gabe Davis. You can play whatever you want, and that's going to be probably not duped. And if it hits, you're not going to have much competition. So yeah, you're reading my mind. You read my lineup CSV for sure. So
Well, I do have admin rights now, but final note too. I mean, the Chargers are horrendous against deep passing game, right? I
yeah,
mean, just
yeah.
so again, it's just crazy ownership there.
What about the LA guys, right? Quentin Johnston did catch a touchdown in that 70-point blowout, but clearly outperformed by Joshua Palmer. Palmer played a little bit less snaps than Quentin Johnston. Alex Erickson and Jalen Guyton split about 20 routes each, but any strong stance here? We're just going to play those guys as ownership, projections, salary dictate.
I did not have an initial lean. My thought was to kind of try not to lose to any of them. So I'll ask
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
do you have any leans here?
No, I think that's a really good way to look at it, right? You have these strong stands on this slate, whether it's and this is any short slate. This is great advice, right? If there's guys you're like, I'm okay being under. Like for instance, Joe Mixon on this slate. You and I both believe that the field is not playing their workload appropriately. By nature, you should be over on Chase Brown, under on Joe Mixon. I don't think that's crazy to say. If you feel differently, certainly that's fine. Gabe Davis, we like being over on him. Jake Browning, we like being over on him. Whatever it is, right? But then there are guys you don't really have an opinion on. And I think if you're playing multiple lineups, your way of thinking that you just outlined is a great way to think about it. Is all right, that's fine. I don't have a strong stand, but I also don't want to lose to these guys, right? So I'll match the field, maybe play a little under. If I'm playing six lineups, I'll put them in one, maybe two, depending on their ownership. That way, if they hit, my day's not done. They still project decently well, and I don't want to be way underweight when I don't even have a strong stand on them.
Yeah, and I love where you're thinking with kind of the template idea, because we saw it on the last slate, right? T. Higgins and Jordan Addison.
Yes.
They were those kind of like 15% owned. When they hit, you're not mad about it. You're like, oh yeah, I mean, fair. But yeah, if you're kind of sleeping on those guys, or you're too focused on all your leverage, you might end up only, not. If you're in small field, you might have clicked in zero, and if you're MMEing, you might have only had 10%,
Yes.
and that's tough, right? So those are, and we have those guys here, right? Kind of those. I mean, uh, Julio Shakir, right? We just talked up Gabe Davis, but like Shakir's a fine play. He's not 50% owned.
Yep.
If he got there, it wouldn't surprise you, right?
Yep.
So those Chargers receivers just seem like they're in that bucket. You just kind of eat it and don't lose to it. Um,
Yep.
I'm curious, how do you approach that in small field? Like, if you're doing like six lineups, like, do you just try to kind of rotate through those guys and eat one? And I've always struggled with that.
It is tough, and I think in the past I've tried to match a little bit or try not to lose to everyone, but with the rise of simulations, even more so, where we know that they can play, and I say they, I mean DFS players who use simulations that play multiple lineups, they can play allocations more optimally than you and I can, just purely by definition of what a simulation means, right? So when I don't have strong stands or I'm going to be way underweight on a guy, I would rather just have 0% in small field, 0% in large field. Maybe it's a little different, but I'd rather take much stronger stands with a small set of lineups, and even larger set of lineups these days. If if it comes down to it, right? If I make the lineups and I feel great about it, sure. But if I'm on the fence, I lean towards being way more underweight than overweight, or than in
Yep.
the line.
Yep. That makes sense.
Like
Cool.
if just this is a rare example. I like Higgins on this slate, right? But if I was building lineups and I kept getting 1 out of 6 with Higgins, maybe 2 out of 6 with Higgins, and he's going to be 50, 60% owned on the slate, I'd rather just play zero and know that I have that leverage if he busts.
Yeah. So I mean, last week, right? I played zero Joe Mixon and it worked.
Yeah,
And that was a big stand. Like I could take a zero there, right? But I just said I don't like this guy. I know he's not getting the ball. His ownership is way too high. I'm never even going to get to half of the field, so
right.
I'm not winning if he goes, right? So but that does not apply to these 15% guys, which is kind of our original point.
100%. I would much rather match the 15% and go overweight than try to get 1 to 2 of a guy who's 60%. I'd rather get 60%
Yep.
or more, or basically zero. Okay.
All
Let's go.
right. Any other receiver stuff?
I think we mostly covered it. We hit on all the players for all the teams.
Yeah.
Just reminder, George Pickens is an underperforming wide receiver. If you want some subjective data, a lot of practice reports said that Rudolph was hitting Pickens on a lot of deep balls. So there's your extra narrative there. Uh, no, nothing else beyond that, right, Jack? Underperforming wide receiver, you play him and you profit.
Yep. That's a rinse rather repeat.
All right, let's close it out with tight end. We'll talk about defense as everyone asks all the time, despite us just saying try to mix them up evenly. Tight end Kincaid, not a great tight end slate, by the way. Not as bad as that Monday night slate we played, but Kincaid, Firemouth, Tanner Hudson, Gerald Everett, couple 20 to 30%, maybe some 40% snap guys in there. Any strong stands, or are you playing it pretty straight up?
Uh, I'm interested in Hudson because Chase is out. I mean, they threw a lot of short passes to Chase. I don't have any like advanced data on this, but I just watched the game and they threw a lot of short passes to Chase. Higgins is a down the field guy. I assume Boyd will get some of that, but he does like Hudson, and I just think it's the ownership's pretty low. And especially if you're playing Browning, I mean that just seems like a really nice cheap one. Um, Beyond that, I mean probably just eat it. Are the Chargers still rotating all the tight ends?
Everett's playing a little
No,
bit more lately, so I'm a little more interested now. It's not as like it was the first half of the season.
he's got back to back 8 target. He's got 8 targets last game too. So yeah, and especially with Allen out, yeah, I think you just eat that. Fryermuth again. That's just one of those like I don't love it. I don't really want to lose to it though. So I'll probably just I'm not going to take a stand on tight end there. But Hudson is probably someone I'd try to get at least. We have him 10%. I'd probably try to at least get double on that for my MME.
Yeah, and I think Kincaid's the guy. If I had to be underweight on one, it would be him. We expect him to be pretty popular for the most part, and dealing with some sort of injury, shoulder. He's not on the injury report, but Knox is back, taking away a couple opportunities. So I think he's probably priced at his max on this slate, and it wouldn't shock me if any of the other guys outscored him.
So does that mean you'd have interest in Knox in large field?
I think you have to. Again, it's not a great tight end slate, but if Knox caught 2 for 20 and a touchdown, that could easily be optimal. So I think you have to consider
Yeah.
him.
It's another slate where the tight end position they could all hit less than 5 points, and
Okay.
you just need the min price guy that caught 3 passes or something. So,
Very, very true. So two tight ends on the slate, or are you going to limit it to one?
I've just let it do it, and I'll look at the lineups. That's usually how I approach it. I don't think any of them are like I would consider trash plays, so I'd probably let it happen.
I think so too, especially with the receiver situation so wide open on the slate. I think you can certainly allow it. All right, defenses allow it versus a quarterback. Don't necessarily have to build for it unless you want that to be your point of differentiation. We know it's profitable on short slates. Bengals against Mason Rudolph, that looks great. Bills against Easton Stick, that looks great. Steelers, missing their guys, and then they're going to be a little more popular. They actually are going to be way more popular than the Chargers, so I don't like that as much. And then Chargers, a sub 10% defense on a 2 game slate, you have to like that.
Yeah, this is an interest. I think this the one interesting thing of defense here is a lot of times on the short slates we actually see the bad defenses get pretty chalky because people are just it's the last thing they click in to
Yeah,
make a lineup fit. Obviously you don't need the salary here, so LA is 5% owned. We know from Showdown, anytime you get a low on defense, you just play it because they can one play and they're optimal. So I think that applies here for sure. And they fired the coach. Maybe they'll come out
sure,
inspired and they'll try a little bit. And we know Allen, has been a turnover machine for some time. So I mean that sticks out to me as the obvious one to get overweight on. Other than that, I think you're right. You just kind of eat it,
for sure.
spread it around.
All right, so to recap here, we advise in multiple lineups playing all the quarterbacks. We like the backup running back specifically for Buffalo and Cincinnati. It's a slate where you can leave tons and tons of salary, even hand building. The biggest thing is, can you upgrade to Cook, basically? Can you upgrade to Josh Allen? If so, that's probably too much salary, especially for hand building. We really still like mega stacks here, so 4 players at least from one team, 1 to 2 players, ideally 2 from the opposing team, so that's 6 players from one game. You can play defense versus your quarterback. There are some good low owned options. Gabe Davis, namely, leads that pack as he normally does. Anything I missed, Jack? Anything else that we talked about in the show that you think is important, or anything we haven't talked about?
Two things. One, be around a late swap, right? This is
Oh yeah,
2 games spread out, so make sure you're checking your lineups with late swap. I guess a 30-second version for folks who haven't seen that spiel before. You just want to, for high risk, you want to click through your lineups, look at your minutes remaining, look at opponents above you's minutes remaining, and then try to make decisions. If you think you're in the best position, play as chalky as you can, and the worst position you're in, play less chalk, leave more salary. That's kind of the quick and dirty on that. Any notes to add on that?
no, it's just definitely look, and the more you do it, the more you'll get a feel of what you need to do or what you do not need to do. If you're near the top or near the bottom, you know what to do. The murkier situations are where you're kind of in the middle and you're trying to cash. That makes it tougher.
Yeah, and I won 60K on a late swap, so definitely do it.
There we
And
go.
then the other note I think I'd make if you're trying to play all the quarterbacks and you end up under the field on Allen, we just talked about, if you're under the field on a stud, maybe go zero. But why it makes sense to still play Allen even if you're under is if you think about the ways we said to play him with the overstacking with the bringbacks. With players like Gabe Davis, you're getting leverage on the lineups you do have. So you can be under the field, but the lineups you have with him are more likely to win. So just want to throw that out there for folks who are, scared about like not playing 75% Josh Allen.
Totally, and that's a great way to explain that scenario. So, all right, that'll do it for this video. Just some reminders about content, upcoming schedule for this weekend because it is Christmas on Monday. Obviously, NFL does not care about that, so we have games every single day this weekend. So our daily plug at OccupyFantasy.com is up for the Saturday slate. All the stuff we talked about in here is in a written, condensed format with rankings, more strategies, all kinds of tips, specific contest type uh, constructions, as well as showdown tips. We didn't touch on showdown in here, but our writer Bismo did a great job of hitting on the showdown slates as well. That is already posted. The link is in the description below. The Occupy model and the lineup builder are up and running for the slate with projected ownership. For the main slate on Sunday, that daily plug will be up tonight. We recorded this Friday evening if you're watching this Saturday, so daily plug will be up for the main slate. We'll have a live Q&A in Discord on Sunday morning for the main slate. Sunday night we'll have a daily plug for that on the site, no video, no Q&A. But then Monday on Christmas, Jack and I are degenerate enough to do a live stream for you all who are willing to listen. So at some point Monday morning we will do a Christmas 3-game live stream, 3-game slate. Yeah, we're gonna get away from the family for a sec and do that video for you. There will be a plug for that day as well. Just subscribe here on YouTube. That is the best way to get notified when these videos go live, when they're uploaded. You won't miss a video by subscribing. It is free to do so. And one more video. I think our guys, as we were recording this, Chuck and Chris, our NFL guys, best ball guys, they're recording a playoff best ball video for Underdog for those of you who are interested in playoff best ball. They'll have all the strategy. They'll do some live drafts. That's up on the channel as well. Jack, I think I got it all. Anything else?
No, I'm looking forward to the next one, and hopefully we have some screenshots to share from this one. So go bad quarterbacks.
Absolutely. So, Jack from DFS Magic, I'm Brian from Occupy Fantasy. Thank you for listening, as always, and good luck on this Saturday pre Christmas Eve 2-game slate.